we welcome you to the basement here at the WMAR Vault. I'm Jamie Costello. Here at WMAR, we are celebrating over 3/4 of a century on the air. We were the first TV station here in Maryland, and now we're setting our sights on the future in streaming. And to that end, we're mixing the old up with the new, opening up the WMAR Vault. We're dusting off the 16 million feet of archive footage. And that's enough to get from Baltimore to Los Angeles and still have nearly 400 miles left over. Well, we hope you enjoy this episode of the WMAR Vault.
Photographer Norman Freeman and I spent the last few weeks on the road, stopping off in cities and towns from the eastern shore to the mountains of western Maryland. Through the eye of our camera, we show in contrast how blacks live, what their dreams are, how they interact with whites in the community in which they live. And we talk to people, many people, about what it's like to be black in Maryland.
I'm one who believes that education will solve many, many of our problems. Education on the part of the non-black community, having them get to know us and respect us.
You got people walking the street now, head full of education, and can't get a job, save their lives. But we didn't have the opportunities when I came along.
Our report is entitled Profiles in Black Maryland, but it's much more than just a profile. I'm Horace Holmes, News Scene 2. Annapolis is not only known for being the capital of Maryland, but in the 17 and 1800s, it was the capital of slave trading in the state. You can still almost hear the ghosts of Kunta Kinte and the thousands of other African slaves who were bought and sold here in what today Annapolis calls its Market Space Plaza. 2 to 3 centuries, blacks have lived and died in this town. But today, how do blacks live in the capital of a state that, for centuries, has prided itself on being the home of freedom and equal opportunity?
There's a lot of opportunities for black people. That's right. A lot of opportunities. I made it successful.
Jobs?
I don't have one right now. I don't have a job. Anything.
We are gaining, but we still have a lot to accomplish.
The black community used to be in the heart of downtown, in the shadow of where the State House now stands. But today, 12,000 blacks live in Annapolis, and 5,000 of them live in the 10 public housing projects on the fringes of town. They were displaced in the late 60s by urban renewal and the historic preservation projects. But not all blacks live in poverty.
I think there's just been a 180-degree change from what Annapolis was in the late 40s to what it is now.
Dr. Horace Allen is one of Annapolis's leading citizens. We spent the day with him at his plush bayfront home on the outskirts of town, a community made up of black professionals.
I'm one who believes that education will solve many, many of our problems. Education on the part of the non-black community, having them get to know us and respect us.
Dr. Allen has gained the respect of many whites and blacks in Annapolis as a medical doctor, a civic leader, and a politician.
So in almost every responsible area, blacks are able to participate. And I think all those things go to make a community a better community in which to live.
Black people are politically, socially, and economically oppressed in the city.
Carl Snowden is one who will be quick to tell you that the prosperous lifestyle Dr. Allen enjoys is the exception, not the rule, for the majority of blacks in Annapolis. To prove the point, he took us through several of the city's public housing projects.
Water pipes freeze up during the winter, you know. Landlords, they don't do anything if you're living in the black community.
There have been an attempt by many to make the progress that blacks have made in the city and state to roll back the clock. But I must tell you that there is an effort on many people's part to prevent that from occurring.
On the water, I mean, you know, we got the same opportunities as anybody else. You know, white or black doesn't make any difference.
It's been hard to find a place. If you find a place that's too high, or if you find an apartment, it's either they don't have any openings.
But you have to do something for yourself sometimes, too. You just can't sit around and wait for someone else to do something for you.
In the year 1767, a ship sailed into the colonial port of Annapolis with a cargo of slaves. One of them was Kunta Kinte. Today, 7 generations later, his descendant Alex Haley made the same journey. Haley, author of the internationally famous book Roots, arrived aboard the governor's yacht to a hero's welcome. Haley was thrilled.
And I remember taking navigational charts and working with some people who are sailors, nautical people, and just trying in a vicarious way with a pencil tip to figure which way must the ship called the Lord Ligonier have come into here. And now, obviously, it's kind of really thrilling to be on the actual water.
In the hour-long formal ceremony, a procession of political leaders praised Haley, his book, and his slave ancestor, Kunta Kinte. Haley said Annapolis is wise to honor its past.
The quality of dealing with its past, of not being stigmatized by its past, but saying this is what was, and here we go from now. 200 years later, certainly it is not as it was then. And the best way to prove it is not as it was then is to commemorate that past and prove how far one has come from that time. Not only the slaves, but those who came on the immigrant ship as well.
The highlight of the ceremony was the unveiling of a plaque which read, "To commemorate the arrival in this harbor of Kunta Kinte, immortalized by Alex Haley in Roots, and all others who came to these shores in bondage and who by toil, character, and ceaseless struggle for freedom have helped to make these United States." This is Patrick McGrath on the scene in Annapolis.
Following graduation from Douglas High School, Otis Warren Jr. attended the Community College of Baltimore and the University of Maryland. Today, he's a trustee of CCB and an advisory board member at the university. Otis Warren Jr., head of one of the finest minority real estate operations on the East Coast, was the first black elected president of the Greater Baltimore Real Estate Board.
Hello, I'm Susan White Bowden. In celebrating Black History Month, we present one of today's Marylanders making history. Baltimore City State's Attorney Kurt Schmoke was the first black running for a citywide office to receive more than 50% of the vote. Earlier, Mr. Schmoke served as an assistant United States attorney. Today, the City College, Yale, Harvard Law School graduate is still found in the classroom. He considers talking with students vital to crime and drug use prevention. Kurt Schmoke, a distinguished black Marylander making history.
Towson, the anchor of Baltimore County, a modern white-collar city, trendy, upscale, a breeding ground for the young urban professional. Right in the shadow of posh Towson sits a small neighborhood. It's just 1 block long. The name of the street, Swartz Avenue, and it's a street that's rich in history for a handful of black families that live there.
This is our paternal great-grandmother, Georgia Anna Reynolds.
Roberta Carter's grandmother and grandfather were the first of 4 generations of Garretts to live on Swartz Avenue. Mrs. Carter can trace her family's life on this street back more than 100 years.
I raised my children here. Okay? My brother raised his children here. His daughter raised her children here, right here.
So you're not going to give it up?
We don't intend to give it up.
How could Mrs. Carter give up and move out of Swartz Avenue? She's lived here all of her 69 years, and she still has family here. Her brother lives with her, and other relatives are her neighbors.
That was one of the beautiful structures, you know. It was made very elaborate.
When Mrs. Carter took us on a walk through Swartz Avenue, it was like taking a walk back in time, her memory turning the pages of a history book.
We're going to get to the schoolhouse right now. When we get here to 417, see the one over there?
Mm-hmm. Swartz Avenue not only had its own school, but its own grocery store and community center, all within people's homes. It was that way when she was growing up because blacks weren't allowed in the white establishments in Towson.
Although you were in a different category of people, you know, money-wise and whatnot, you still were accepted in the community.
When it was time to go home,
you came to your community and they were in theirs, but who cared?
Carter does admit, however, that it was a disappointment knowing she wasn't allowed to go to the school of her choice because of her color. Today, Mrs. Carter's dream is coming true. At the age of 69, Roberta Carter is a student at Towson State University, working on her master's degree.
Señorita Vitanza, ¿cuál es la primera persona
The doors that were closed for Roberta Carter when she was a young woman are now open to aspiring blacks like 20-year-old Melanie Durham. Durham is also a student at Towson studying international business.
I want to go overseas and work and meet a lot of different people. I like meeting people and traveling. And hopefully I can hold a very powerful position, raise a family, better my life.
Up until now, life for Melanie Durham has been pretty darn good. She grew up in this integrated middle-class neighborhood in Randallstown. She says she's close to her family, especially her mother, who instilled in her a drive to succeed.
If you want it, you'll try anything to get it, and if you really want it, you'll achieve it.
Melanie says while growing up in Randallstown, no one has ever tried to hold her back. All doors open to her white friends have been open to her.
If I ever have a family, I always want them to be as comfortable as I was, or even more comfortable, you know, with money and just freedom. I don't really feel that where you live determines that. You know, it's like I keep saying this, but it's the person, and that determines the future.
Clara Anthony got her daughter a library card when the child was 3, so it's not surprising that after Anna Curry graduated from Dunbar and Morgan State, she went on to earn a master's degree in library science from Atlanta University. As her professional career advanced, she established a reputation for blending the traditional with the changing role of libraries. In 1981, Anna Curry became the director of the Enoch Pratt Free Library.
Oreo's magic predates the coining of the phrase in the 80s. It arrived in Baltimore in 1966 in the person of Frank Robinson and crystallized when the outfielder led the team to its first World Series. Off the field, the magic evolved when Robinson found for the first time in his career the color of his skin was unimportant to the owners, his teammates, and the fans. The subtleties of Frank Robinson's first season in Baltimore are as important to baseball and civil rights as his subsequent breaking of the color barrier at the Major League Baseball management level. When he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, Robinson said his only regret was his playing time in Baltimore was too short. When the native Californian joined the Orioles coaching staff, coming back to Baltimore was like coming home.
All around us are the ruins of that fire. In front of me is the elementary school, which has been completely destroyed. The Baptist church is gone, as is the corner grocery store, the barber shop.
Cambridge burned all night. By morning, National Guardsmen lined Pine Street in the heart of the black section of town to secure the peace. Today, Cambridge is quiet. A certain healing has taken place over the past couple of decades, but as an outsider coming here and talking and walking with the people on Pine Street, you can't help but feel the outrage and anger of the 60s has been replaced by another feeling, the feeling of frustration.
Dorchester County is one of the prejudiced towns I've ever been in. It's very prejudiced.
No jobs, no houses for the black people. The elderly is not being treated right, and the young black is not being treated right.
We've got black people who are afraid to come through here at night themselves, and that's a sad commentary, but it's real.
The reality, Greg Meekins says, is that progress for blacks in Cambridge since the 60s has been slow. Blacks make up 40% of the city's population. On the positive side, there is no longer outright discrimination.
You can go anywhere you want to go. You can eat in any restaurant at all. Years ago, you could not go into them, but it has changed tremendously.
On the negative, the black-owned stores and businesses that once lined Pine Street in the 60s and burned during the riots have not been rebuilt, and many feel never will. But perhaps the worst news, black unemployment over 10%. As a result, many young blacks are leaving, looking for better opportunities.
I think about it all the time, just leaving town.
What is beginning to happen in Cambridge has already happened up the coast in St. Michael's. The seafood industry, which brought many blacks to the water, has dried up. The young left town and St. Michael's became a retirement resort.
A lot of white people on this side of the shore. So much to do for them. Waterfront down there and all that. Hey, nice.
Nothing for blacks, though.
Nothing for blacks.
And the water is just a dead issue. Because you can see what's happening right there now. Water's a dead issue. That's right. It ain't nothing but a slow starvation.
One time it was plenty of watermen, black watermen, but they're not into it anymore, you know.
Most of our young people who grow up here and after received education have to go to the big cities in order to find employment. And most of the times never return.
Better days ahead.
Baltimore's Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. was known as the 101st United States Senator, in spite of the fact that he was never elected to public office. He was, however, director of the NAACP's Washington Bureau for 28 years. No legislation bears his name, but the late Clarence Mitchell Jr. spearheaded the ongoing drives for the enactment of no less than 5 major civil rights laws between 1957 and 1968. President Carter presented the nation's highest civilian award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, to Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. in 1980. In March of 1985, the year following his death, the Circuit Court of Baltimore City was named the Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. Courthouse. It is a fitting memorial to a man who spent his life fighting for justice.
Forest Park High, Morgan State, the University of Baltimore School of Law. That academic path prepared Elise Jude Mason to be an Associate City Solicitor for Baltimore. Since her early involvement with the PTA, Mrs. Mason has always shared her free time with the community. Today, she serves on the YW Board of Directors and is chairperson of the Morgan State University Foundation.
The music was from the radio. For the second week in a row, radio station V103 talked up a United Negro College Fund money-raising event. As for yours truly, it was to Adrian first for a shampoo. By the way, the first time that anybody but my mama ever shampooed my hair. More than 100 people responded, came here to Studio 808 on North Charles to get their hair either shampooed, cut, or styled at 1/3 to 1/2 off the regular price. Nearly $2,000 was raised for UNCF. My cutting was done by Francis. Francis Johnson, by the way, is the president of 808 Incorporated. Products used today were provided by North Avenue Beauty Supply in conjunction with Revlon. Now, today's event was from 9 to 5, but if you missed it today, you can come back tomorrow. Same time, same place. 32 stylists will be on hand. And remember, all the money they make goes directly to UNCF.
As one prominent Baltimorean told us, the city is a city of haves and have-nots for blacks. There are the powerful who hold respected positions, and there are those who are down on their luck.
Baltimore have changed a lot, and it's out there if you really want it. But, you know, if you want to just sit back and feel bad about yourself and always saying what the white man won't let you do and all the stuff like that, of course you ain't going to get no way.
Ethel Lambert's lifestyle falls somewhere in the middle of the economic scale. She lives what she calls a modest, honest life.
I never went to college, so I don't have no degree to be, you know, choicey. But I did take a food service in school, so I always been in food. So when it come down to that, it was really easy for me to get a job.
Mrs. Lambert now works as a cook at a local cafeteria, and she and her husband work hard, maintaining a good home for their 5 teenage children. In the afternoons, there's always a lot of action at the Lambert home. She keeps things together while her husband is at work at Bethlehem Steel. It's Mrs. Lambert's time with the kids, to talk with them, fool around with them, and instill in them the values she lives by, the values her mother instilled in her.
My mother, she said that you can do what you want if you really try and everything. I don't want us to be poor enough that
be able to stand on our own, be financially stable.
And Mrs. Lambert is not only proud of Teresa, she says all of her children are turning out pretty darn good, despite all the temptations of the street.
So I can thank God that, as of today, that I have a pretty good family. And after they finish school, then they decide, what they want to do for themselves. Because I'm not going to be here always to look after them. They have to stand on their own 2 feet.
And while she's getting her children prepared to stand on their own, she's continually working toward fulfilling her own dream, to open up her own restaurant.
Yeah, I'm very proud of what I do. Because like I say, food service has always been my thing. And hopefully one day I have my own place with my name in light.
So what have we learned from Ethel Lambert and all of the other blacks we've talked with? Well, there's been an underlying theme that we've heard everywhere we've gone, that while life is good for some blacks in some areas of our state, there are far too many who are without opportunity and without hope. And as Carl Snowden in Annapolis said, those of us who have a responsibility to help those of us who do not. I'm Horace Holmes, reporting for Nightside.
Horace Holmes, such a great reporter and a great friend. The work he did here in Baltimore and then in D.C. always made an impact in our community. We're going to see and hear more about Horace in the future. But that's all the time we have for this week. For nearly a century now, WMAR has brought the news into your home, from film to video to tiny digital cards, over the air, cable, satellite, now streaming. And we'll keep moving forward. And remember to look back at the stories and the moments that made us all Maryland. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the WMAR Vault. We will see you next time. Hey, it's Jamie Costello. If you just enjoyed this episode of The Vault, you can check out more episodes by clicking on this box down here. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that circle, and that'll subscribe you to WMAR2 News for great content every single day.